And sleep is probably the most foundational thing when it comes to health. We have what's called the 3-2-1 method. 3 hours before you go to bed, stop eating. 2 hours before you go to bed, stop drinking fluids. And then an hour before you go to bed, get rid of the blue lights. Turn off the screen and grab a book or meditate or make love or whatever. But once you've got that, and if you still have struggles, then there's 2 peptides that work really well. One's called DSIP, and that stands for Deep or Delta Sleep Inducing Peptide. If you need more deep sleep, and ideally we need about an hour and maybe 10 minutes to up to 2 hours of deep sleep. And what that does is it flushes out the brain. It's like the lymphatic circulation in the brain. It gets gummed up throughout the day. It gets kind of toxic. And so that deep sleep helps remove that kind of the burden from the day, the inflammation. And then it also is how we get growth hormones. So that's when you wake up feeling strong and you've recovered.
Hello, darlings, and welcome to Not Over, Just Different. I'm Natalie Ledwell, and I'm here to share deeply insightful and vulnerable conversations with you from people who are willing to open up and share what their journey's been like so that you can learn and be inspired to take action in yours. It's never too late to begin again or to see a new perspective. No matter what your dreams or goals are, you'll find inspiration and community here. It's time to rediscover yourself, reignite your passions, and make the next 50 years even more full than the first. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week, I have a special guest on who I have been alluding to and dropping names about for a while now. For those of you that have been listening to my health journey and how I'm feeling amazing and looking amazing at this time of my life, part of that is to do with my guest today, which is Regan Archibald. Regan, how are you, darling? How are you today?
Oh, so good. Yeah, so good to be here too, Natalie.
Yeah. So as you know, I've spoken a little bit about peptides and the health journey that I'm on right now. And I got introduced to Regan, a few months ago now. And I remember we went through the process. I got my blood work done and we were in our consultation. And I remember you saying, I guess you've got some pretty long longevity goals. And I'm like, yeah, who doesn't? And I go, and I want to look good and feel amazing when I get there. So I'm feeling very confident that will be the case.
Yes.
Yeah. So you are a functional medicine practitioner. You work out of Utah. Let's talk a little bit about, as you know, our listeners are women in their midlife. And I'm assuming that you have a number of, patients that fall in that category. So let's talk a little bit about some of the reasons that people come to see you and how you can help them.
So probably the most common, because I got into this medicine based on my own thyroid journey. So I had an autoimmune disease that was misdiagnosed for a long time. And then finally, it was a naturopathic doctor who said, you've got Hashimoto's. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to reverse my autoimmunity and do that for a lot of other people. So a lot of women in their 50s, they come because they're frustrated. They've gone to their doctor and they've had their labs ran, and their doctor says everything looks normal, or always want to focus on cholesterol. I don't know if you've noticed that, but in the United States, it's like the more statins we can dish out, the better. And it hasn't really solved the heart disease problem. But these women are like, what about my hormones? And with the Women's Health Initiative, that study that came out like 1999 that was flawed from the very beginning, and it's been debunked over and over again, as far as women thinking that hormones are going to cause cancer. And so there's all this misinformation out there. And so women come to me who are frustrated. They feel stuck. They feel like my metabolism totally changed. I hate my husband. I got no libido. Their energy's off. They can't sleep. And maybe they're constipated. They have cold hands, cold feet. They've tried all the diets and they just can't seem to get their shit together, for lack of better terms, even though they're doing all the right things. They're exercising, they're doing their yoga, they've got their mindfulness practice. And so once we run the right diagnostics and we understand where the interferences are, what deficiencies need to be built up, that's where things start to transform. And I remember I had a client, and you can relate, those of you who are listening, but when she came to me, she was allergic to everything, like anything plugged into the wall, like if she walked into a moldy building, her whole body just would flare up and her hormones were just wrecked. She had her fingernails brittle, her hair was thinning, and just emotionally, she felt like one little deviation outside of the normal day-to-day life would just throw her for a tailspin. So So she came in, she's like, I've worked with every doctor, Regan. There's no way, I don't even think anyone can help me. And her husband used the term, he said, hey, there's a no return policy with my wife. Once like just you're with her for life until you help her. So anyway, we ran the labs and we realized that there were some things that were missed, some issues in her gut. No one actually took the time to run a stool test to look at the interferences from a heavy metals perspective. She had these parasites. She had 3 different really heavy infections, Klebsiella. She also had Enterobacter, and then she had Blastocystis hominis, which is a pretty mean parasite. And so once we got those cleared, then we started working on some of the hormone balances. We got her on the right peptides. And within about 30 days, she started seeing her weight shift, and she was really excited. When she lost 1 pound, it was like the best day of her life. And I didn't really get it because she'd been trying for a decade. But then it just, slowly over time, now she's lost 25 pounds. She's feeling better than ever. She's got her energy back. So we see people like that.
Yeah. And I know some other friends that are coming to see you as well that fall into that category as well. Probably not as bad as that lady, but, getting frustrated with like, why don't I feel good? Like why you look at the basics of life and you go, okay, I'm eating well, I'm exercising. I do understand that when we get to this age that, it's not like when you're 20s when you think about losing 5 pounds and it just mysteriously falls off. That doesn't happen anymore. But, we are facing like brain fog and different things that were coming up for me. Like some days I'd sit at the computer and just look at it and go, I can't even string 2 thoughts together. What the hell is going on? And I think that's just part of perimenopause and menopause that we go through. And I'm sure that if you're listening to this podcast that you probably can relate to some of those things as well. And I think what was really interesting is that when we had our consultation, the extensiveness, because you look at, is it 96 different markers in blood work? What makes your blood work analysis different to others?
I think that the typical blood labs you're going to look at with your doctor or in your annual physical are going to be anywhere from 20 to 24 markers. I mean, it's very limited. And ours 94, but now it's well over 100 different markers. So I keep adding things in that I'm learning about. And I'm like, we have to have this marker because there's so much value when you get the right diagnosis. The difference is, as well as in the medical system, your doctor can't justify things being medically necessary to run labs as comprehensive as ours because your insurance company is going to kick it back and say, hey, there's not a diagnosis that supports you diving deep until the patient's really sick because it's a crisis care model. It's not a healthcare model. And so what we've done is we've just bypassed that and we said, hey, we're going to send you to a local LabCorp and we're going to get all the data that we need so that we can really figure out what's going on and get to the bottom of things. And then once we do, that's where we take those lab ranges and we narrow them down. So I'm trained in functional medicine and instead of looking for a diagnosis so that you can be on a prescription the rest of your life, we're really looking for the patterns that start to break down where we look at ranges outside of optimal. And so you can take something like, we'll just take a marker like hemoglobin A1C. If you're running at 5.6, 5.5, your doctor will say, hey, those markers, it looks good, no problem. But once you get to 5.7, then that's prediabetes. But we would take action long before you became pre-diabetic or especially diabetic because we start seeing the trends sooner based on these optimal ranges.
All right. So walk us through someone's journey. Let's say that they've connected with you, they've got their blood work. You now have given them, an analysis. What normally would happen after that?
What normally will happen is when we go through the analysis, we will look and prioritize. So we'll say, okay, well, if someone's got a lot of inflammation, or maybe we found that their cardiovascular metrics were in the zone that would put you in state of crisis, then we may do further diagnostics. So we may do a carotid artery scan or do a CAT scan for a calcium score. But, outside of that, we would look at what peptides are going to move the needle the most. So we call it the body operation system or the ageless operating system. So if you think about, we all have operating systems in our computers, and if you forget to update it, your computer gets slow. And, I've taken my computer to the Mac store so many times. They're like, oh, you just need to hit the update. And I'm like, oh, I know that. But it's the same with our body. And so, the very first thing is clarify. So where do you want to go? So when you and I met, Natalie, I said, okay, what do you want for your future? And you did. You had very robust longevity goals. And I said, okay, well, what's it going to look like? How do you want to feel? And how do you want to perform when you're in your longevity zone? Because I want to make sure that health span is aligned with lifespan. And so that's where clarifying is really important at the onset. So then you create a vision. And then once we have a vision, then you and I can focus on that vision of what you want in your health. And then the second phase is diagnose. And that's where we look at the labs. And then from the labs, that's where we start putting in different protocols. So I'll work with patients up front. We do a 180-day protocol. So there's 6 phases of peptides that are aimed to help you start moving towards that future that you really want when it comes to your health. And so we may do peptides for muscle building like ACE-31 or tesamorelin or CJC-1295. The peptides have ridiculous names, by the way. And maybe I could describe what peptides are.
Yeah, I was about to say, so let's talk about what a peptide is and what they can do. It's not like you have to be on a peptide for the rest of your life. It has a certain function within the body. And there seems to be a peptide for everything.
Our mutual friend, Garrett Gunderson, there's a peptide for that. That's his tagline for me. But yeah, so if you look at peptides, they naturally exist in the body. And as we age, I always say aging is a gravity-fed sport. It's, it slowly starts to bring us down. And if you don't do something to kind of fight back, then you'll get recycled pretty quickly. And so what happens is our genes start to get turned off that express health. And so that's where we start getting wrinkles in our skin, because we lose collagen synthesis with some of the stem cells in our hair follicles that secrete melanin that color our hair. It turns gray. And so all these things are part of aging. But if you have the right peptides, then those genes can stay turned on. So these peptides are just little structures of amino acids. They're protein structures that are short. And those proteins, they carry a message to the cell, and they bind right on the surface side of the cell, and they'll turn on. It's almost like turning on a light switch. And then if you just go in and if you look at the blood labs and you say, okay, what lights are turned off in Natalie's labs? And if I could turn these on as quickly as possible, no downside for the future or as little downside as possible, that's really how peptides work. So you'll probably notice that your peptides, they shift every month, and some you stay on a little more consistently. But in general, you just want to go turn on those light switches. And then if you've got the right foundation, great mindset, having the right eating and nutrition, having the right exercise protocol. And then for those of you who don't know, Natalie is a boss on so many levels, but one of the big levels Natalie's a boss on is her cold plunging. And so that activates all those peptides that keep you young. But what do you like about cold plunges?
For me, it's the mental resilience, because I get out of a really warm bed snuggling with my puppy and go out onto the balcony. And of course, it's been, we're going into fall now and getting straight into 45 degrees. So for me, it's all about the mental resilience of being able to do that. And then when you get out, that rush of dopamine and everything that you get, it's like, okay, well, if I can do that, I could do anything. It's like, when you start your day off with the right protocol or the right practices in the morning, you've just set yourself up for an amazing day. If I do nothing else but do that first thing in the morning, it makes a difference. But it's made a difference to my energy levels. It's made a difference to my skin, like everything. It's been noticeable because I've been doing it every day now for 6 months. So, yeah, you can see a big difference. It's been awesome. So, all right. So tell me some of the benefits of, we said, there's a peptide for everything. But I know that, I've been taking peptides that help with my sleep, with weight loss, with energy levels, with skin. Walk us through some of the ones or the reason that people take peptides in the first place.
Is it time for a career change? Find out with our free 30-second quiz. This simple yet potent tool will help you determine if a new career path is right for you. Don't miss out the chance to turn your life around. Go to mindmovies.com/career quiz.
We can start with sleep, and sleep is probably the most foundational thing when it comes to health. We have what's called the 3-2-1 method, 3 hours before you go to bed, stop eating 2 hours before you go to bed, stop drinking fluids, and then an hour before you go to bed, get rid of the blue lights, turn off the screen and grab a book or meditate or make love or whatever, cuddle with your dog, whatever you want to do. I like going outside for a walk with my dogs, let them do their thing one more time before it's bedtime and be out under the stars. It's just really magical. But once you've got that, and if you still have struggles, then there's two peptides that work really well. One's called DSIP, and that stands for deep or delta sleep inducing peptide. So if you look at if you wear an Oura ring, or maybe some of you wear like a Garmin or an Apple Watch, if you need more deep sleep, and ideally we need about an hour and maybe 10 minutes to up to 2 hours of deep sleep. And what that does is it flushes out the brain. It's like the lymphatic circulation in the brain. It gets gummed up throughout the day. It gets kind of toxic. And so that deep sleep helps remove that kind of the burden from the day, the inflammation. And then it also is how we get growth hormones. So that's when you wake up feeling strong and you've recovered. But deep sleep inducing peptide, it was discovered in 1957, I believe, right around there. But the researcher was studying rabbit sleep patterns, and he discovered this peptide in the brain of these rabbits. And he found it in the pineal gland, and he said, oh, DSIP, this is what helps the rabbits go into deep sleep, because when he had removed that gene on the pineal gland, then the rabbits, they didn't get the deep sleep. Their wavelengths didn't change. And so, it's been studied pretty extensively since then, but that's one for sleep. The other one is epitalon. And this peptide, or epitalon, if there's many pronunciations of these, but with epitalon, it's 15 chains of amino acids. So they're, once again, they're structured like Legos, and they're folded all interestingly. And, we use compounding pharmacies. By the way, don't just go purchase these peptides online. You may not get what you want, and it may be very dangerous. So I guess I should put that caveat in there. But epitalon is beautiful because it's a telomerase enzyme. Do you know what telomeres are, Natalie? I know you're ready. So if you lengthen your telomeres, then you live longer, ideally. At least that's where you know the health of your cells, for the most part, how well the DNA are going to keep replicating. But epitalon is just a telomerase enzyme from the pineal gland again. But what it does is it resets the circadian rhythms. And in some of the studies done by Dr. Covinson, he's passed away now, but he did some brilliant research on longevity. He found that people who used epitalon for twice a year, that if they used it for he followed them for almost 20 years, but they lived 7 years longer than people who didn't use it. But one of the primary functions is it resets that HPA axis, so the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, so you sleep better. So it just resets those circadian clocks. And they found in shift workers, it helps them get back on the sleep patterns better. They get better duration of sleep, better quality of sleep. So those are a couple peptides that work great for sleep.
Well, you bring up an interesting thing, because how long have peptides been around? It's not like they're a new thing, right?
No, the first peptide ever sequenced was insulin, and it's 33 amino acid chains. And we think insulin is a hormone, but it actually is, it's two peptide structures. So, and sorry, I'm showing all these shapes, and it's just what shows up in my brain, but it's a beautiful peptide. And once we uncovered that, there's this insulin peptide, and then researchers started looking for other peptides, because insulin saved millions of lives every year. And they realized, there's thousands of peptides in the body. And we used to think, there's 7,000 peptides. But now I was just at a longevity conference, and one of the researchers who sequences peptides says there's well over 300,000 peptides in the human body. And we've only sequenced about 700 of these. So as I look at the future of medicine, we're just barely scratching the surface of what these phenomenal molecules can do.
So, who are peptides for? Are they for everybody? And who would benefit from them the most?
Yeah, I think it becomes a personal question. So it's for people who really want to optimize their health. And it takes work, because you can't out-peptide or lifestyle. And I mean, I do have some patients with a caveat that keep them at least a little bit ahead of the game. But it's really for people who want to feel their best. They want to look their best. They want to be at the top of their game, no matter what age they are. I mean, you're ambitious. You probably feel every day like you're just getting started, even though if you look at everything you've accomplished in your life, Natalie, it's like, It's amazing. Like 99.9% of humans will never accomplish as much as you do. And I got a whole another, I have decades in front of me that I want to be just as ambitious and productive. And I think peptides, that's where there's a sweet spot right there for really ambitious humans who want to create a bigger future for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm 55 and I think I'm halfway. Like I honestly, the way that I feel and the way that I've been able to, be productive and my energy levels and my vitality and my libido and everything, I'm like, I could easily see myself being this way for the next 55 years, So if you are listening to this podcast and you're like, okay, I do have some issues, and I think peptides would be a great thing to investigate. And I also think that if you're looking to, if you're like me and you're going, well, hey, I just got to this point in my life. I know I've got so much more to give and I'm ready to do that, but I want to be at my best. How can they reach out to you, Regan? Like, where's the best place they can find you?
The best place is if they go to agelessfuture.com, and then they can book their labs there. You'll see a little link that says book your labs, schedule an appointment. And that website also, we're giving your listeners a free bundle. So they'll get my Peptide Blueprint book. They'll also get all the frequently asked questions. So you'll be able to go down and wonder, what's the safety profile of this? And what does it work for? And so all those things. And then that you'll have the Fitness 50 at Age 100 tool. So you'll be able to grade yourself. I created 11 benchmarks from a fitness perspective that you want to be doing as a 100-year-old that fit 50-year-olds can do. So that's all there for your listeners, and just agelessfuture.com.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've felt the best I have for a long time. And I have other friends that are seeing you that are also in that basket as well. But can you share a story with us? What do you think is your biggest success story? Someone that you've worked with that were in such a place that you've been able to get them to a place where they're just like, I can't even believe this is my life anymore.
Oh, man. Well, the first person that comes to mind, of course, is the most recent cool email that I got with, I get all these pictures of dudes with their before and after pictures. I don't ask them, by the way. But I do appreciate it because this individual came to me and he works he kind of manages this whole security department for a big jewelry store here in Utah. And when he came, his eyes were all black because he was working, he'd have to do shift work. Sometimes he'd be in the day, sometimes at night. And he was like, I just can't keep going. I've got no motivation. He's got no libido. His wife was with him. She's like, yeah, he's getting really sick. And he just had no energy, no vitality, and he was about 50 pounds overweight. And we just started talking about his lifestyle. I told him, I said, I don't think you want to work with us if you're going to keep drinking as much as you are. And so he, looked at his wife, and I said, I'm just being honest with you. He is drinking about like a half of a fifth of whiskey every day. I said that I'm fine occasionally, but I don't think that's going to help you on your longevity goals. But he looked at his wife, and I said, I'll let you guys talk about this, because I could tell there is like something going on. I'm not a therapist, but so I left the room. I came back in. His wife's got little tears in her eyes. And by the way, you ladies out there, you have no idea how, if you've got a man in your life, man, you can be so influential over what their thoughts are about their health by not nagging, by being support. We're babies, by the way. Our psychology is so weak, you have no idea. And all we need is your encouragement. But she was encouraging, and she said, you can do this. I'm going to help you. And instead of saying, well, you've never done this in the past, anyway, she started today fresh. And I saw him a month later and walked right by him in the clinic, didn't recognize him. And he's been 6 months in, he's lost 40-something pounds, and he sent me a before and after. And the doctor who's been working with him primarily on the team, she's like, look, he's actually a really good looking man now. Like, he's very good. Like, all of a sudden you see like this dude that came out that, was looking like a 65-year-old that now looks, he's 45. I mean, it was a crazy transformation. But that's the one that comes to mind. Is just, his name's Chad. And I was so proud of him because he made the commitment, but he had a strong support system at home. And his wife also, she's looking great. She got her hormones dialed in, and they both have their libido back. So the relationship's just 10 times better. And I think that's one of our mottos, is when health improves, everything improves.
Yeah.
And he finds that He's a better boss. He's enjoys his work more. He's thinking about bigger things in the future. They're planning all these trips. They're making love. They have date nights again. They're interested in each other. But that wouldn't have happened if he didn't make his health a priority.
Well, you think about it, like, I mean, yes, and I actually talked about this on another podcast with a woman who's a urologist, and our podcast was about intimacy. And I'm like, yeah, look, we are going through a whole lot of changes as women, but men do as well, and being empathetic and understanding when it comes to that too. And, this is the big thing that I think has really been the biggest gift on this peptide journey for myself, is that, like, when you start to get into this place where you're feeling vital, you've got this energy, you're losing weight. Like, I think I've lost about 35, 40 pounds over a year, which has been amazing. But you have so much more confidence in yourself. You feel so much better within yourself. Like, your relationships change. Your relationship to work changes. The way that people see you, the energy that you're giving out into the world. Like, I don't struggle anymore. Like, to get up and exercise in the morning, to eat right, I don't need any willpower. I just do it, because it's easy to do it once you get into the rhythm of it. So, I mean, it has completely changed the way that I show up in the world. And so if you're listening to this, and to just investigate on how you can live your best life, not just from your mindset, but from every cell of your being, in a way that's going to really make a difference for you, your family, your loved ones, and the mission that you have in the world. So, Regan, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, as always.
Yeah, it's my honor. And thanks so much for having me, Natalie.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sal. We'll chat to you soon. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Not Over, Just Different. If you felt inspired by this episode, please subscribe and drop a comment below to let us know what you loved. My goal is to reignite the spark that you may think you've lost and cultivate a space where no matter what walk of life you are, you can step into the world with power and confidence. I would love to hear your reviews. It helps us to reach more incredible women like you. So until next time, keep growing, keep striving, and keep believing in the power of your potential. Here's to living your best life now.